You've definitely seen this island on a map, but have you ever stopped and wondered, why is it two different countries? The story behind that border isn't just about politics. Nope. It's a story that goes back centuries, full of invasion, culture clashes, and one single moment where everything, and I mean everything, changed. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's ask the main question right up front. Why is this one island two separate nations? The border itself is actually pretty new. We're talking only about 100 years old. But the reasons for that border? Oh, those go back way, way back. So today, what you have is the Republic of Ireland, an independent country, and Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom. And look, this split didn't just happen by accident. It was forged in a long and often brutal history of invasion, rebellion, and a fundamental clash over what it even means to be Irish. Now, before we can even talk about the division, we have to look at a long, long period of, well, a very strange kind of unity. For centuries, Ireland had this incredible superpower. It just absorbed its invaders. It didn't matter who showed up on its shores. Eventually, they all became Irish. Let me show you what I mean. Just look at this pattern. First, you have the Celts. They arrive and establish this powerful Gaelic culture that becomes the bedrock of the island. Then Christianity arrives, and it gets woven right into the fabric of that culture. Next up, the Vikings. They show up, they raid, they build cities like Dublin, but give it a few generations, and guess what? They're speaking Gaelic and blending in. Then the Anglo-Normans invade, and the exact same thing happens. The island's cultural gravity was just that powerful. So for nearly 2,000 years, the rule was pretty simple. Invaders arrive, and eventually they become Irish. It was this unbreakable cycle. Until, well, it wasn't. Because one group of arrivals would come with a plan to deliberately shatter that pattern for good. And that brings us to the Great Division, the exact moment when this ancient pattern was not just broken by accident, but was deliberately and permanently shattered. You see, the old way was simple conquest, Vikings landing on the shore. This new way was totally different. It was about replacement. The plan wasn't just to rule the land, but to fundamentally change who was living on it. And this new strategy had a name, the Plantation of Ulster. This wasn't just another invasion. This was a systematic government project. The English crown seized land owned by the native Gaelic Catholics and moved in tens of thousands of loyal Protestant settlers from England and Scotland. The goal was to create a permanent, loyal British colony in the north of Ireland. And this is the absolute game changer. Unlike every single group that came before them, these new settlers were specifically told not to assimilate. They were meant to stay separate, to keep their British culture, their Protestant faith, and their loyalty to the crown. And all of a sudden, you had two completely distinct societies living on the same land, but not together at all. This created the fault lines that honestly define so much of this story right up to the present day. On one side, you have the native Gaelic Irish, overwhelmingly Catholic and now kicked off their own land. On the other, the new Protestant settlers, loyal to the British crown. Two communities, one island with totally different allegiances and identities. And this new division was then hammered into place with unbelievable violence and discriminatory laws. Oliver Cromwell's brutal conquest in the 1640s was followed by the Penal Laws, a set of rules designed to completely crush the Catholic Irish. They were barred from voting, from holding public office, from owning land. It was a systematic removal of their power from society. And the result of that policy is just staggering. Take a look at this. In just 20 years, Catholic land ownership in Ireland absolutely plummeted. This wasn't just an economic shift. This was the entire social order being violently flipped on its head. So these deep divisions, set way back in the 1600s, they just festered for centuries. And they would ultimately boil over into famine, rebellion, and finally, the actual physical splitting of the island itself. Okay, let's fast forward to the 1840s. Ireland's population had exploded to over 8 million people. But for a huge portion of the rural poor, their entire survival depended on a single crop, the potato. So you can probably guess what happened next. In 1845, a blight, a plant disease, completely wiped out the potato crop. The result was a catastrophe of biblical proportions. The Great Famine killed an estimated 1 million people, mostly from starvation and disease. And on top of that, another 1 million people were forced to flee the island just to survive.
The British government's response was seen as criminally inadequate, and it created this deep, lasting bitterness that just poured gasoline on the growing fire for Irish independence.
In the early 20th century, that fire finally just exploded. In 1916, you had the Easter Rising in Dublin. Now, it was crushed militarily, but it became a massive symbolic victory that lit the fuse for the Irish War of Independence, a brutal, bloody guerrilla war that finally forced Britain to the negotiation table.
But the treaty that ended the war came with a staggering cost: partition. The island was literally cut in two. 26 counties in the south and west became the new Irish Free State, but the 6 counties up in the northeast, where that Protestant Unionist population was concentrated, would remain part of the United Kingdom.
But here's the thing. Drawing a line on a map didn't solve the core problem. All it did was trap it inside the new borders of Northern Ireland, setting the stage for the decades of conflict that would become known simply as the Troubles. You see, inside this new state of Northern Ireland, the Catholic community, who were the majority on the island as a whole, were now a minority. And they faced decades of systemic discrimination. They were often locked out of the best jobs, good housing, and any real political power, creating this powder keg of resentment that was just waiting to explode. That powder keg finally ignited in the late 1960s. Inspired by the civil rights movement in America, Catholics began marching for equal rights. But when their peaceful protests were met with a violent crackdown, the situation spiraled into a bitter 30-year conflict, the Troubles, that only came to an end with a truly remarkable peace deal. The Good Friday Agreement of 1998 was, frankly, a masterpiece of political compromise. It didn't declare a winner or a loser. Instead, it created this incredibly complex system to accommodate both sides. It said, okay, Northern Ireland is in the UK, but it gave nationalists a peaceful path to a united Ireland through a future vote. It forced both sides to share power in government, and critically, it recognized that people could identify as British, Irish, or both. And this hard-won peace completely changed the island. With stability, of course, came investment and growth. While the Republic of Ireland's Celtic Tiger economy was already booming, cities in the north, like Belfast, once famous for conflict, were reborn as these vibrant hubs for tourism and business. And that brings us to today. The border is still there, yes, but the peace has held now for over a generation. And new huge questions are coming up. With major political changes like Brexit and shifting demographics, the ultimate question is suddenly back on the table, and people are asking it out loud. After all this time, could a united Ireland finally become a reality?